Welcome back to Gold Derby. I'm Christopher Rosen. I'm joined by Joyce. Joyce, we have so many finales to talk about.
TV is over.
This is it. The
There's nothing
Emmys.
else to watch.
We're recording this on May 31st. It's the end of the Emmy season,
Yeah,
basically,
today's the last day. A new cycle starts tomorrow. So, yeah.
and everything ended. It's all done. So we're gonna spoil all these shows. So if you have not seen Succession, Yellowjackets, Mrs. Maisel, Barry, or Ted Lasso, which we'll also talk about as it dropped today, just don't listen to this or
Get
watch
out
it.
of here. No, I hate when things are released to the public and then someone accidentally stumbles on a spoiler themselves, and then they get mad at the people for talking about something that they have every right to talk about because it's been released to the public.
Right. So like we're gonna just spoil everything here.
So get
Anything
out of
that's
here. If
happening.
you don't want any spoilers, get out of here.
Okay, I'll give you 1 second. I'm gonna say one. I'm gonna count to three. 1, 2, 3. So Natalie died on Yellowjackets, Joyce. That was the big spoiler
Oh
there.
yeah, we want to start with Yellowjackets. I guess we could go in order because that was
Maybe.
Friday.
Yeah.
Friday, yeah, because that it dropped on streaming on
Yes.
Friday.
Yes.
Yes, Juliette Lewis,
Yes. Who plays Nat?
adult Nat. Yeah. So I was talking about the show with my friend like a couple weeks ago, 2 weeks ago. I don't know what is time, and we were like, they're totally gonna kill off an adult Yellow Jacket
Okay.
because if you paid attention to any of the press this season from the cast, they were just hyping up the finale. It was like, you will never believe it, and like we were so emotional, blah blah blah, all this stuff. And then I realized like it was gonna be Nat, or I had a feeling it was gonna be her, because 2 weeks ago, the same episode of CBS Sunday Morning with Jeremy Strong's interview, they did one with Juliette Lewis.
There you go. That's a good
Yeah.
tell. We
Yeah.
learned that, and that's always a great tell. If someone on the show who is a pretty famous character or actor is doing press, that usually, like Logan, obviously, like Brian Cox doing a lot of press before the season, even it was like that was a good tell that he was not making it through this season, and that would die.
Yeah, and I like, because that like they were promoting Jeremy's CBS Sunday Morning like a couple days before, and I that Sunday I went on YouTube to find Jeremy's, and then it was recommending Julia Lewis's too. I was like, interesting.
Interesting.
Yeah, but I also felt like the show itself would kind of want to do a death like that just for the shock factor.
I thought, yeah, I thought this season was fine. I thought the finale was great.
Yeah.
It reminded me of. I kept thinking of I kept thinking of season 2 of Hacks, which I also similarly felt was like a little like kind of flailing and then really kind of came together in the end. And I think Hacks was more successful in season 2 than Yellowjackets was, but it was the same kind of thing where it just like the finale was great. I just love the finale for Yellowjackets. I thought it was really good, but I don't know if the whole season kind of hangs together as well.
I thought the whole season of Yellowjackets and the finale was just like, okay. I'm like, they're just, I think the whole season overall is just kind of undercooked a little, no pun intended.
Yeah.
And then I think they were just trying to do a lot of stuff in the finale too. And the adult storyline is just not really working.
Well,
The past storyline is what's the most compelling.
certainly.
And it feels like they know exactly what they want to do there, and I think they have that like pretty much laid out, whereas they're kind of figuring out what to do in the adult timeline. And it was really hurt this season, I think, by keeping them apart for so long.
Really, that was a strange, especially because it took them almost 7 episodes to get them together. And then once they got them all together as adults, nothing really happened, and then it ended. That was
Yeah, and then they killed one of them off, and they had this ridiculous chase through the woods because they were just reenacting the hunt.
I guess I was like,
okay.
I felt like, and again, another thing was like, it obviously is not the series finale, and there are way more stuff that they could do, certainly, right? Like with it. But I was also like, what is the point of the adult storyline? Now they wrapped everything up so neatly and so quickly, especially with like Adam's death and like what's her face?
Reporter.
Yes, and like all that stuff, and like love Elijah Wood just being a lunatic and like great stuff. But I was like, what am I watching the adults for? And outside of like mourning Natalie and like kind of like that whole thing with like Misty and her, obviously, I was like, what is compelling to carry into season 3 with the group of adults? Like I don't really understand like what they're gonna do to withstand interest for a full season.
Yeah, and I kind of feel like if they were to just make a wild pivot and just make season 3 all about the wilderness in the past, I'll be like, great. Like,
Yes.
yeah,
And
because yeah, I same thing. Like, I'm like, I don't know. I feel like they're trying to connect it too much to the past. And I think it would serve them better to make the adults like less connected to like the wilderness stuff and like all the supernatural stuff. And maybe just kind of be more grounded in with them like dealing with the trauma or like something. And I don't know, maybe you can say like they wrapped up the Adam Martin thing too quickly because then they just dispersed and then they gave them no reason to be together again, you know?
I mean, like, I always found the Adam Martin thing kind of annoying because it felt like a thing they did in the first season that maybe they didn't think through and then needed to have some kind of consequences. And so
Mhm.
then they were like, had those consequences in the second season, and then just were like, this, I'm tired of this too. And they just kind of ended it, right? You know what I mean? Like, it just felt
Yeah.
like something that they didn't need. Like, not to, again, like, I'm sure we say like Succession is so much better than all these shows. I definitely think that. But I was like, the way Succession handled the cater waiter's death to me was a great way to do it because it ended up really, it didn't matter to these people and it was true to the characters that it
That's
didn't
the whole
matter.
point. Yeah.
And it kind of like, we didn't need that to come back, except that it did in the finale, which we'll talk about. But like, we didn't need that to come back, and like Kendall did not need to get like punished for that death, like in the traditional sense. But on this Yellowjackets, it just was like, we really need to like reckon with the fact that they murdered this guy. And then it was like, but do we? And we'll just end it, right? It just felt like they just kind of ended it. I don't know. I just was like, okay.
Yeah, because then they just have Elijah coming up with this conspiracy to frame the cops, and I'm just like, sure,
A very
okay.
quick thing. I will say, and we'll talk about this from an award standpoint. I absolutely love Sophie Thatcher. I thought she was
Yeah,
amazing. And I'm kind
she's
of
really
like,
great the last 2 episodes.
and I'm trying to figure out a way to get her into my predictions, because I do think that while this season maybe wasn't super successful, certainly from a like story, I don't know, it didn't feel as successful as the first season. I do think like the actors maybe would break through here more so than they did in the first season. We both have, I think, obviously Melanie Linsky and Sophie, right? You still have her in as well.
Yeah, I think so. I don't
And then I
know.
was like, maybe I could put Sophie Thatcher in too for Natalie. I just thought she's so good and like really, really solid performance there, especially in the finale and, like you said, the penultimate episode.
Um, yeah, I still have Sophie Nélisse. I mean, I'm not sure about her. So I could see it being just Melanie and Christina again. I do think
Same.
it had, I would say before the season started, I would have been like, oh yeah, it'll get more acting nominations. Just because it seemed like it was well positioned to do that in a season 2, and you assume voters would have caught up in the year in between. Um, but now like I don't know, because it's also like with the release, which was also weird, you know, with the hybrid release of digital on Friday and then linear on Sunday, and that I think it just completely got swallowed up by Succession airing opposite Succession.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that's true.
and then I think the buzz, again, no pun intended, did not um grow as much as you would expect, I think, for a show that had such good word of mouth for the first season to do in a second season, you know, like I could have envisioned it being kind of like Scandal, which was a mid-season show, and it did perfectly fine for like 7 episodes in first season, and then just blew up in season 2. Like
Right.
I could have foreseen that for Yellowjackets, but I think, yeah, it just had like bad luck going against Succession. And then I think it does still have its hardcore fans and people are still watching it, obviously. But just like the conversation about it was just so diffuse, because I think you had people watching it on Fridays, and then even like all the interviews and postmortems and stuff, you had like some postmortems like right at Friday, middle of the night, and then some were just running Sunday at 10 p.m. I'm like, okay.
The media definitely doesn't know how to cover these shows when they're like this. I feel like you're right. Like there were like finale stuff for Yellowjackets right away, which I was like grateful for because I had watched it. But then also like Sunday night, no one was talking about Yellowjackets. Obviously, that was not
No, but there were still,
priority.
people obviously were still covering it, and there were still some
Right.
like postmortems published at 10 Sunday too. So Yeah, so from like a buzz standpoint, I think it's kind of muted. But again, like, does it matter if the voters are watching? So
I feel like they probably will. And I think
yeah,
that the reason I'm more confident in the younger actresses maybe breaking through would be neither one of those categories is like overwhelmingly stacked. And like we're saying
well,
here,
lead for sure.
and even supporting, I think you can make room, I think, for like Sophie Thatcher. I don't know if she'll get in, and she's definitely like a long shot, but I would not be shocked, let's say, if she got in based on like the lineup. The other thing is, like we're saying, those are way more, the younger storyline is way more compelling, and I think it's like way more interesting. So if you're watching the show, even if you're like, this isn't as good as I thought, whatever, you're definitely invested in the teen aspect of it. And I think compared to, like, I wouldn't put Juliette Lewis in, even though she had like a death scene or like a little bit to do in the finale, because I'm just
But
like,
that scene was also really rushed.
yeah.
Uh, yeah,
I just
and
was like, I don't think that's not, like we said, like, I think Melanie Linsky and Christina Ricci are obviously safe in my mind to get in because of the way they're given just enough to do, and those characters are really fun. And they were in last year, so it feels like they make sense that they would get in. But I'm not sure it could support like a Juliette Lewis or like a Tawny Cypress or whatever also getting in for lead, just because I think the adult stuff was not as compelling as the teen stuff.
yeah, and but I also wonder, like, because there are so many, like, the younger cast is so much bigger. And I do wonder, like, how much of like how closely are they paying attention to it? I like
Yeah,
that's thing, right?
it's definitely tough. I mean, I will say, like, in the case of Sophie Elise and Sophie Thatcher, uh, they both did a lot of press this season, more press than they did last season. So I feel like that helps, right? Like in like separating them out. But like Samantha Hanratty, who's really good as Misty, did not do as much, and like I don't think she would. You know what I mean? Like I think you'd just be like, young Misty, sure. I don't think you would even maybe not necessarily have the name recognition even in the other two, dude, just because of the media coverage.
Yeah. And Melanie Linsky has also been, she's always
Yes.
a team player and hyping up her co-stars. So she's been doing that a lot for both Sophies and other people in the cast too. I think she posted something about Sammy after her Steel Magnolias
Mm-hmm.
scene. So yeah,
And
it's kind of also how I know you have Elijah, but I kind of feel that way about the guys in the cast. Like Warren Cole was great this season, just
he was.
hysterical.
He was.
But I don't know if they're like paying attention to the dudes.
I don't know, but I was like, I'm gonna go down with Elijah. He'll be my Matthew Good of the season. I'm just gonna keep him in there the whole time. I just think he's so good. He's so funny. And I just love him and Christina Ricci together. I think that's such a great twosome. They're like really, really fun together. So much so that I wish they were also in other stuff together. Like again.
It's been what, 25 years,
Yeah. Put
26
them in
years since Sex
another,
Story?
yeah.
Yeah.
Put them in another thing in a movie. Um yeah, so Yellowjackets fine. I think the other problem I have with Yellowjackets is beyond their control. Is just like the writer's strike has shut down the third season. God knows when they're going to come back to write it. Let's say the strike ends in like September, October, November, and then they come back. Like, when is the third season going to air? Like 2025, and will people still care? And that's always a problem with these shows, right? Like, it's like,
I know even before the strike, because obviously everything is being delayed right now.
yeah,
And even before COVID, but like or in the period, I guess, like the 1 year or whatever, like since they resumed since COVID, it's I hate, just a lot of these shows you have to wait more than a year, sometimes 2 years for the next season of something,
well,
and I
Severance
think
we're going to be in that right soon. So
yeah, I mean, well, like they're impacted by the strike, but
yeah,
it's like, like Euphoria, like even before this, it was not going to come back this year,
I,
you know.
I'm a Euphoria apologist. I guess the only thing I would say is at least that show seemingly was going to have like a massive creative reset by jumping ahead like 5 years. So
But
like,
it doesn't even matter what happens narratively. I think it's just from like a viewer perspective and a fan perspective. It's like you're making people wait so long. As I know sometimes it's just logistics involved and people's schedules and you're working on other projects. But like people forget what happened on the previous season.
I
Like that happens to
absolutely.
me. Like
Hmm.
some shows I finish watching the season and then like 2 minutes later I forget what happened. And then the show comes back 2 years later. I'm like, what the fuck happened last season? I
I
have no idea.
We'll talk about this when we do comedy later. But with Ted Lasso, there were a lot of callbacks to characters from previous seasons that I literally had no idea who they were in this finale that happened just now.
And like that show didn't even take, I mean, it didn't air in 2022, but I
No.
mean, it's pretty compact compared to a
Yes.
lot of other shows that take
Yes.
2 year breaks in between, you know.
So yeah, so like Yellowjackets, I'd be a little concerned on what they do going forward, only because of the time. And like I said, like having watched it, it's obviously there is like a lot of meat on the bone. I can't believe I just thought of it like that. But like there is a lot more stuff to do with the younger people, right? Having the cabin burned down, and we have all these great things that we have to figure
Which
out.
then, man, oh my God.
But
It's like
like
fucking kids.
right. But I was like, but with the grown-ups, I just was like, I don't know what is keeping me compelled to watch this storyline. Grappling with Natalie's death and the diffuse supernatural notion that they're being like driven by some woods monster to like be murderous, I
Yeah,
guess.
like I was like excited to have, adult Lottie and adult Van. So like the other thing too, I feel like they didn't really surface a lot of the characters. I know it's a large ensemble, but I would have liked more screen time with like Van. Even
Absolutely.
Elijah did not have a lot of screen time.
No.
It kind of this season and Ted kind of suffered from similar issues. It was just separated characters for too long, and then like certain storylines that did not work, the adults and needs, and then just underutilized characters.
Yeah,
Too.
I mean, I definitely think that's right. And like, I mean, I guess now that if Juliette Lewis isn't on the show, you could argue like, oh, like Lauren Ambrose would have like a bigger role in season 3, right? Or something like
But
that. Or
they
maybe
gave her cancer.
right. And they could bring Simone Kessel back too, obviously. And like, they were both great, but they weren't on it a lot. It kind of reminded me too of like the over promising, through maybe no fault of their own, but it reminded me a little of like the Fast and Furious franchise. Joyce, did you see Fast X, which is a
I didn't, because the last one I've seen was Fast Six, 10 years ago tomorrow, because I saw
I'll
it on
tell
my
you this,
birthday.
Joyce.
So
In the ensuing time, and remember, we're spoiling everything here. In the ensuing years and movies, they brought back Han, who had died
yes, I
in
know.
Tokyo Drift.
People were very excited at the reveal a couple years ago.
And then the problem is they had created Shaw, who killed Han, and then became a member of the family. And so people were pressed that like this man who had betrayed the family was now having coronas with them. And so there was a notion online, and then that kind of like got co-opted by the creatives of justice for Han, that we're going to have justice for Han and it's going to be paid off and this debt will be paid. And so in the 9th movie, they did not do justice for Han. And it ends on a cliffhanger with Han meeting Shaw. And you're like, man, 10, they're going to really do justice for Han. And I'll tell you what, in 10, they did not do justice for Han again.
Well, is it going to be a trilogy now? Is that what Vince said?
Maybe.
Yeah,
But
maybe.
in the interviews before the movie was released, Louis Leterrier was like, justice for Han is paid in 10. And then after the movie was released, there were interviews and he was like, justice for Han is more like a vibe. And that's kind of like, I feel like with a lot of these shows when they're like over, like, like adult Van, it's like, man, Van is going to be a huge part of this show. And then it's like, she's more of a vibe. And it's like a little flavor.
I mean, like they didn't introduce her until, what was it? Like the 4th episode, I think, right?
Yes.
But then like she's like barely in the rest of the season, and like Elijah came in earlier, but still very little to do in every episode. It's just like bits and pieces, similar to Ted. It's like you just see someone for 45 seconds in one scene.
So I always think that's a problem with this, and I feel like Yellowjackets kind of fell into that trap. That said, I did enjoy largely the season, but I thought the finale was the best episode of the season. And if they end up like, I don't know, I don't think it'll do poorly in the Emmy race. I think it'll be just fine, and it could overperform in the acting with the younger people if people actually watched it, let's say. But I don't know if they're paying attention.
I think I still have Ella Purnell in guest. Do I?
I thought of her, but I did not put her in. But
I still do. That also feels so long ago.
Yeah, it does. That's why I didn't put her in, because she never came back for the finale, even like as a ghost.
So the other thing is, the creators have always said they have a 5-year plan, and after this season, I'm just like, I feel like you have a plan again for the wilderness, the past, and I'm just like not sure how sustainable the adult, whatever ideas you have for the adults are for 3 more seasons.
I would 100% agree. Should we go to Succession now, Joyce? A little
Our
show.
fave.
Our fave. Uh, Joyce, what were your thoughts on the finale?
Perfect. Loved it. No notes. So love all the people pressed by it too. I thought it was the perfect ending. And I now that it's over, I can vent about one of my biggest frustrations with how people watched the show, which was
Yeah,
wrong. A lot of people watched it wrong. I would
definitely.
say I think people watched it wrong in both ways, because when it premiered 5 years ago, a lot of people just did not like the characters because they were bad, right? They were assholes and they didn't get it, and they thought it was a story about redemption, but they were just consistently bad. And it's like, no, that's the point. Like, that's like, they're not, like, you're just watching cycles of abuse and trauma, and this
Mhm.
is what happened. This is the result. These like idiotic children, and they're rich and privileged and don't recognize their privilege. And they're not going to change, because that's Jesse Armstrong's whole ethos, that people don't change. And I think, once it got popular and more people started watching it, I think a lot of people also watched it out of FOMO when season 2 took off, because I had a lot of conversations with people about, like, do I need to watch season 1, or like, I stopped watching season 1 but now it's so popular, I don't want to miss out on this. And since then, I think people watch this wrong because they think it's about who's gonna win Waystar, and it's like, it's not about that at all. It's not about winning. Like, no one wins, because it's all bullshit. Like, exactly like Roman says. He even says it in the pilot
I went
when
back and watched the pilot. I started rewatching the whole season again, and the pilot
you mean the
is
whole series?
yes, the whole
Yeah.
series. Sorry, and the pilot is a remarkable.
The finale and the pilot
Yes.
are mirror images of each other, because the pilot is like, everyone is pre-congratulating Kendall, because everyone expects him to be named CEO. And yeah, and like, Roman comes back and from LA, and he's like, I don't want it. Like, I don't want to be stuck in this cage. Like, congrats, bro. Like, it's all bullshit anyway. I don't want this at all.
Mhm.
So yeah, but I think, like, people watch it wrong because they think it's like Game of Thrones. It's like sports, right? It's like this battle to see who's gonna win the throne, and that's just like a Trojan horse into the show, because it's just about this family and, like, the trauma that they endured as kids, and all their harebrained schemes to try to win their father's love through his company. And it's never about who was going to win. It was just about watching what they would do to try to win. And I hated all the coverage, especially this season, but like, knowing it's the final season, a lot of the pre-premiere coverage was like, who's gonna win on Succession? A lot of like high profile outlets
Yeah.
too.
Oh yeah.
Like New York Times, like, and like, I never read any of those, never paid attention. If I saw that, I just scrolled right past. I hate all the power rankings.
It's a
Like,
lot of SEO
who's
stuff, Joyce.
down. I know that, but I'm like, this is just not what the show is. But like, just regular people just tweeting about it. I'm like,
Right.
that's not what the point of the show is. So
I
um yeah, and it was a tragic ending. I was like, this is great.
It
Like,
was incredibly. I thought it was like the most tragic. I absolutely loved it. I'd say I honestly think it's the best finale of any of these like difficult men shows that we've seen. I thought it was better than Sopranos. I thought it was better than Mad Men. I thought it was better than Breaking Bad. And as a whole, I think the whole show is better than those shows too. I do think it's like the best show uh ever. I just think it's perfect. And I will say, just to piggyback on your point of people watching it wrong, the other thing I think people get wrong, or it's easy for them to be like, oh man, these people are all bad. The show is not they're not really, they're just people, right? And I think it's easier for people to be like, Kendall sucks, or like Shiv's such an asshole, or blah blah blah, and not like think of them being the same as these people, but you really are. And like, the only thing maybe that the show is very cynical, but the only thing separating you from them, you and the collective you, is like the extreme wealth. And that, like, there's no real way that any person, no matter how righteous they think they are or how good they think they are, would behave differently in that situation. Greg is a perfect example. If you watch him in the pilot, he's a fucking deadbeat loser. And by the end, it's like he is like in the game, right? And like fully in it. And it's like, that is a perfect arc, I think, for like a regular person to enter into the show. And I think it's easier for people to watch it and be like, man, I hate all these people, or they're all evil or whatever, but it's like, they're really not. And like, that's kind of like the point also, I feel like, watching it. And that makes it more tragic to me too, because it's like, oh, like, there are worlds where maybe if these people were treated differently or raised differently, they would have been mostly differently, right? Or a little different. And that they weren't is kind of like set them off on a cycle that will repeat itself in, I think, Kendall.
Yeah, because they all basically like wind up where they are in the beginning, maybe a little worse off in some people's cases, but they're all like, the show was really about like purgatory and death, and they're all in purgatory in some way. I think Roman's a little bit better off
Jeremy,
than
yeah.
the other than Shiv and Kendall. But he's still like right back where he was at the beginning of the show in the pilot.
Jeremy called it a doom loop, I believe, right? For Kendall.
Yeah.
And certainly I think for all of them, yeah, like, so Kendall, I mean, Jeremy basically was like, Kendall's dead. Like, he just is
Like,
not,
he tried to go in.
he tried to go in, he tried to commit suicide, and there's no recovering from it. In the post-show podcast or whatever, Jesse Armstrong was like, Kendall will never recover and never be successful, and this will mark his whole life. But he didn't go so far as to say he would just kill himself.
No.
And Roman, he was like, you're saying, like, there is a way that you could read that where it's like he has a moderate, not a happy ending, but certainly like he's kind of free from.
Well, yeah, because he was, again, like in the pilot, he was like already out-ish. Like,
Yes.
like Kendall was right. He never wanted this. Like, he
No.
only thought he wanted it because of his dad, right, telling him.
Yes.
And like Roman was always trying to, not like all of them are trying to appease Logan, but as we've said, like, he's the most sensitive of all of them. He just likes hanging out with them, but their love language is abuse, right? So he can't actually say, hey, I want to just hang out as siblings or like as father and son. But he never wanted it. And I think he is the one who is the most or got or has seen the whole situation with open eyes, as the title says, earliest, because like he in Kill List, like he says, like he's dead, right? So I think he's died figuratively first, and he's the one in the finale who has to literally tell Kendall, like, it's over, man, it's bullshit, like, we're nothing, this is all nothing,
right?
So he's the one who gets there first, the earliest, because he can accept it first. So, and yeah, like he's in the pilot, like he doesn't want to be in this cage. So I think when he's at that bar, he's just like, fuck, I just wasted a whole year of my life. Like Jesse says in the post show too, he's like, this is just a detour. And it's like, yeah, it is. Like,
yeah, the thing I absolutely love the finale. The other thing is, like, we talked about this. I mean, Kieran the whole season in the finale was unbelievable. But I have to say, Jeremy in the finale was so good. I was like, man, I really think he should win. I just thought his performance in the finale was unbelievable. And the arc of Kendall getting finally, like you said, like the first episode is literally like Kendall's going to take over and Logan fucks him. And then Logan has like a stroke or whatever. They have an aneurysm. And then the siblings are trying to argue over who should take over. And they don't want Kendall to do it, even though Kendall's like, I make the most sense. I've been working here for a couple of years. And
you already congratulated me yesterday.
We've been planning this. I was supposed to take over, and Chip's like, fuck you, you suck, you're an idiot, and you're not going to do it. And that's the whole show. It's just in that pilot episode, and it's like circled over and over. But this felt like the highest of highs for Kendall, obviously, in the episode, and then brought down incredibly low to where being over, right? It never had a sense of, for them, and I guess because of their privilege and stuff, there were never real stakes in this, right? For any of them.
And that's the thing. It's like they're billionaires arguing over this job that they're never gonna actually do. Like, none of them need a job.
No.
And they just think this is their birthright.
But I would say, like, in the earlier seasons and until now, there was never really any stakes either. Maybe stakes is not the right word, but it's like Logan owned the company, so it didn't really matter who, like, it's their company, right? So it doesn't really matter. Like, they could keep jockeying for position and it's all bullshit because it's their own toys, right? So it's just as like playing with toys. But in the finale and the final season, now it's literally not theirs anymore, right? So it's like, it does feel final for Kendall. He'll never get there.
And then the thing is, like, remember the first two episodes when Logan was still alive? Like, they just kind of accepted it, right? It's like, they're gonna sell to Gojo.
Right.
Logan's gonna sell to Gojo. We're gonna start the 100.
Right.
And then we're gonna buy Pierre. They were like ready to move on and do their own thing. But then the second he dies, it's just they pre-grieve, they mourn for a little bit, but then Kendall sees his name.
That was it. I mean, once Kendall saw his name,
and then like they just like
that was it.
Just out of their individual cages again, and they're just
once Kendall saw his name, the spiral of getting him all the way up and then down was just amazing. I thought everyone in the finale was amazing. I loved Matthew McFadden again, just crushing it. I have no doubt he will win. He's just so good. He's so good.
I never expected any of the kids to win. And I was like, they're obviously never gonna win, like none of them, because they are terrible at everything basically, and they know nothing. They're not serious people. And I was talking about this with my friend who actually just started watching the show. So he's like towards the end of season 1. So we were talking about over the weekend, and he was like, so like, who do you think is gonna get it? And I was like, it's not gonna be any of the kids. He's like, oh yeah, it's not gonna be them, because it's like he's not even done with season 1, and like he knows it's established, like it's not gonna be them because they suck. And
I would say I don't think they suck, but they would never, like, all of the things that Kendall said were right, and he actually should probably run the company, but there's no way that the other two would ever let him do that. Like, Kendall might
yeah, well,
suck, but
that's a different thing. But like I still don't think like he has that killer instinct that Logan is looking for. Like he just
no.
he's the most performative of the three of them, right? Like he knows how to give a speech and give a presentation, but what are his actual ideas behind it? Like we don't know. Like it doesn't, like they're just kids playing with toys, you know.
Right.
And like so it makes sense for it to be Tom. And like I was telling my friend, I was like, I think it's just gonna be Tom. And because he's the one who's done like basically everything right, quote unquote, throughout the whole series. Like we know like he just wants to be rich, right? So he's ingratiated himself in the family. He knows like who to, you know, kiss ass to, like Logan specifically. He's shown his loyalty to Logan, and he's willing to do whatever it takes just to keep his job at ATN.
Also, key word there that you just said. He's literally the only one who actually does his job.
Yes.
Tom is like, has a job. He is successful at that job. Very successful, seemingly. Not like he's actually in there doing the work, and none of them have any idea what that is.
Yeah, exactly. That's why they suck. Like they don't have any like the actual real business acumen. And I think like Tom missing the funeral just to deal with the aftermath of the election, I think that earned a little respect from Lucas. Because he was there for the conversation when Greg is like, oh, I'll be the wheelman because Tom is not here, and they like shut down Peter. So, and like I think there's that unspoken, not camaraderie, but just kind of like acknowledgement between Tom and Lucas, and even Logan. I mean, we definitely saw between Logan and Lucas last season when they were just bonding over like, oh, being rich sucks, it's so boring. Not sucks, but like it's like, you know, I have so many like rooms in this house, it's like, ugh, you know, what, like, how do I even buy a bed? Like that was the type of stuff they were talking about. But I think they respected each other, and I think Lucas respects Tom for working for it, because all three of them worked for their success and the kids did not.
Definitely that sets Tom apart, right? Like he actually did work for it. He's a striver, and like he wants to be rich, but like he wasn't handed that riches. And like Logan seemingly wasn't either, right? Like you might think he's an asshole, but like he definitely worked his way to get to that.
Yeah, and like Lucas is not a real coder, but like he still started this company.
Right. He's a hack, but like he is a, these are the myth of self-made men, but they all are more self-made than the kids.
Yeah.
Get your own pile, get your own bill.
And it also like drove home, especially the scene in the apartment when they stumble upon the video that's just playing in the dining room of that dinner party.
Hunter set it up as like a virtual dinner party, right? I guess.
Yeah. But it really drove home just how out of the loop the three of them are, the kids, because they were not invited to that. Like that was, they were seeing a side of their dad they never knew when he was alive. And the people Logan invited to that party were Carrie, his executive suite, and Connor. And I think it's like these are the people that he actually trusts and respects. Like obviously he trusts the people he works with, and then Carrie is his, you know, side hustle. But like the Connor thing, you know, goes back to the last episode, Church and State. Like he was the only one he talked to about his death plans. Like he was the only one who knew about the mausoleum. So it's like, and Connor's again the only one who's not interested in the company.
Connor has that great moment when Logan dies, where he's like, he never even liked me. But
Mhm.
I think that's interesting because I think that's completely false. And you could see it over. He liked him in a different way. He might not have
Yeah.
treated him like a son, and certainly was not nice to Connor and his mom. But I do think you're right. Like Connor had way more of a personal relationship with Logan than any of the other three did. And that's from the start, even because like in the first episode or the second episode, again on rewatch, Connor's like, oh, talking about cryogenics. And Kendall kind of blows him off, but that comes back in the final season because Connor's like, oh, he went off cryogenics or whatever. But Kendall's like, you were talking to Dad about cryogenics, but he was not listening to you or whatever. But I'm like, they were actually talking about something that wasn't the company and wasn't business. And that
Yeah.
does separate Connor. And maybe he doesn't respect Connor because he's a moron, but he does seemingly like him more, or certainly have more of some kind of a friendly affection to Connor, if not a father-son.
Yeah, like not they're, he's never gonna be like, I love you, son.
No.
Like genuinely to any of his kids. No. I think like they're, and I think they all on some level like see Connor as a joke, but I think Logan saw him as less of a joke than the other three did.
I mean, say what you will about the final moments in season 3 when they're talking and Kendall's like, I'm the eldest son, and Connor's like, no, I am the eldest son, right? Like, and they're all like,
He must be considered.
He must be considered. I am the eldest son, and he's like right in Kendall's face. And cut to the end of the season, Kendall still does not take Connor, even acknowledge Connor, right? And at least Shiv, eldest boy, and Shiv is like, you're not, because Shiv actually maybe remembers from Connor's conversation that actually, wait, Connor is the eldest son. Yeah, I thought that was really interesting too. I just love
and
it so much.
they're these kids that Logan never let in because they just were not serious people. And then even the way the three of them fought in that other conference room, they were, again, a callback to Shiv's eulogy last week when she was like, oh, we were always fighting outside Dad's office. And it's like, it was, again, like the grown-ups watching kids fight. And even the way when Kendall assaulted Roman, they were wrestling on the floor like little kids do when they fight.
Yep.
Contrast that to Tom and Greg slapping each other in the bathroom, iconic moment. But they're both gigantic because they're like 7 feet tall, but they're like they're fighting with their arms like grown-ups do usually, because like that's how you land a punch, right?
When Greg slapped Tom, I absolutely cheered. I was like, oh shit. It was,
I've been wanting to do that for so long.
I was like, this fucking rules. And I gotta say, I love the Greg and Tom relationship throughout, and I absolutely love their final moment together. And I was rooting for them to make it most of all. Not because I'm shipping them, but I actually do think they are. Tom is definitely closest friends with Greg, and their friends can fight and friends can fuck each other over, but like he still got him. And I thought that was great.
Yeah. And I mean, and Greg is just similar to Tom. Like they both sold their souls already. So they were always going to go to whoever had the power and whoever could look out for them. And so, I mean, honestly, I think if Tom had told Greg at that dinner with Lucas, like, oh, like, it's going to be me. Because the way he worded it made it sound to Greg like he was fucked and he was going to his job. But I think if he just told Greg, like, it's going to be me or something more reassuring, he would not have called Kendall.
No.
He was just, but like that, using Google Translate to listen to
great moment.
Incredible.
I will say, like, having seen how the season played out and watched the Jesse Armstrong interview on like the controlling the narrative video that they released after, I'm not surprised at the way most of the cast like reacted to it being the final season. Specifically, like Sarah Snook, the narrative before the season, was like she was surprised that it was over and like upset, not like mad, but like, oh, like there's so much more here. And there obviously is. And like even hearing Jesse Armstrong talk about it, he was like, he seemingly has a whole like season of Shiv and Tom and the new Waystar like planned out. It sounded like just in his like little little discussions, but all the other characters, specifically Kendall and Roman, felt like they were at the end of the line. But Shiv, I think, would have, obviously the way she's kind of left off, would have more to do if they ever continued the show.
That the limpest handholds in history.
Incredible.
So good. And I thought, what she did was so appropriate too, because she's so fickle. And I mean, all of them are petty and driven by emotion, but like she, I think especially, and she just could not like as she said, she couldn't stomach
Yeah.
seeing Kendall take
Hmm.
it. And I've seen a lot of takes about her. She did it because she chose Tom and was
No,
looking out for Tom. No, she didn't. Like
absolutely
she
not.
just it was the moment that Kendall sat in Logan's chair,
The
and
moment
that
that it was a
triggered it.
cascading thing. The moment he sat in the chair, put his feet up, doing
Yeah.
that
Talking to
bullshit like
Stewie.
Stewie
Yeah. And
bit, he
yeah.
seemed like such a phony. And the funny thing with Kendall is, I would say too, and you saw that in that scene, and then later in the boardroom, is that he is, I would argue, he's actually very good at public speaking, and we've seen him succeed in that aspect over and over again. From the eulogy to Living Plus to like the end of the second season when he's like throwing Logan under the bus to the congressional hearings. He obviously wins that, and that kind of sets Logan off to get us to the end of the second season. All of those things he's great at. In the boardroom, he was like a total like stammering idiot. I just felt like he did not make a great case for why he should get it. Like even
He
in
was just
that,
feeling cocky because he
right?
like figured he had the votes. It's like
Yes,
he thought he was gonna win.
and with Stewie too, like not a genuine bone in his body in that sequence. And I was just like, that doomed him. And yeah, I think like Shiv just like exactly what she said. Like that's why she could not stomach him, and she cannot from the first episode of the show, she could not stomach him. And for that's it. And like, yeah, like none of these people change, and like that's obviously the Armstrong edict, right? But like they their relationships grow and change in different ways, but they are who they are. And she just doesn't like, like Kendall and Shiv had gone through a lot, right? Like,
Yeah.
um, and that was it though. She just like, I can't
She
stomach you
wasn't
doing
she
this.
wasn't choosing Tom over Kendall because it was a lateral move for her. But she could stomach Tom, quote unquote, winning. Then she could stomach Kendall winning, someone she's fought with her entire life over this,
Mm-hmm.
trying to get this position. And it's she's in a hell of her own making because
Well,
she's
she's
again,
like her mom now, right?
yeah,
Like
she's
that's
her
like,
mom, and
yeah.
then she's just close to the power, but she's not in power, and she's still in a feudal marriage, loveless marriage.
I mean,
It's like
definitely
it was
loveless
that
marriage.
call in the beginning, she was trying, and then Tom
Was
was
she
like,
though? Like, what did you take that as? Do you think she actually
I
was
think she was
trying?
trying to cover her bases, and I think she expected him to say yes.
I will say, like, I was so impressed with Tom was a real asshole. I think, like, again, another thing the show does really well is like when you like the characters, they write them to do stuff that make you not want to like them, right? Or in that way. And Tom, I think, has always been the most likable, like regular kind of character. And like you were like at the end of the third season, that was a great moment that was well earned. And I felt like you were rooting for that moment to happen, right? For him to like take ownership and like finally stand up for himself. But then this season, it felt like he was incredibly cruel to Shiv over and over again. But also true to the character is that he was like obviously heartbroken from the wedding night, and that's it. Like he's not going to just take her back or let her off the hook at all. Like that's it. And he's like kind of done. And like her
Yeah.
continuing to try, I think you maybe would have been like, oh, Tom will be like, yeah. And he was like, nah, well, I don't
And
know.
then also we know he's prioritizing his job. Like that's what
Right.
the call was about. Like he kept asking her, is like, oh, so like, am I okay? And she's like, I'm trying. So yeah. And then I think she did because she always Shiv and she girl bosses, like she thinks she's better at doing things than she actually is. And it's like like completely ridiculous that she never got in writing that Lucas would make her CEO. And
What did she
she
say? Like when she pitched it, I'm hot shit or whatever. Just the
yeah,
most embarrassing, so
yeah.
embarrassing.
And he's just like, I'm not taking you seriously. And she always thinks like she can control, manipulate Tom, right? She's always been too confident in her ability to do that, and she can't do that. And so like he's fighting back to her, he's like, no, I don't want to give this a go because I'm worried about my job and you're not helping me here trying to save my job. And yeah, and like in the end, she's not actually trying to do it. I guess it's kind of, you could kind of read it as like, oh, she's actually saving his job, but I don't think so at all. I think it's just she just could not handle giving it to Kendall. And then I think in that the three of them in the conference room, I think she didn't have any reason other than that to explain to Kendall. That's why she's just like, no. Like you could see her trying to struggle to come up with something. And I think And at one point she just remembers the waiter and she uses that because like who cares, like not who cares because someone died, but like in their world, like they go by no real person involved, right? Like they've covered up bodies before.
She absolutely did not care. I agree with you.
No,
She was just struggling to find reasons for
he
him
was
not
trying
to
to
do
find a
it.
reason, and that was a good reason.
But I will say Kendall betraying that moment was the end for him with Roman, obviously, and that
Yeah,
was it, because like that was a real moment of connection for the siblings. And even though Shiv, even in that moment, was kind of like like Shiv and Kendall had a better moment when he asked her for the hug. I guess that was season 2, right? And
in Safe Room.
in Safe Room, than they did in that moment in Italy. But Roman definitely took that to heart, and I think that is why they were really connected this season, a lot of it. So when Kendall betrayed that trust or just lied about, and like that was it for Roman. Like he was like, no way, like that was the end for him. And yeah, I mean, like it was a very big tragic ending, I would say. And like they said, they really geared you up because they put the last scene they obviously shot together is the siblings in Barbados. That's a great moment, and it was like one of the, I think people really love, like the trick of the show is that people really wanted them to connect and get together, right? And like work together. And if they could
Yeah,
ever
because
work
people want
together,
happy endings.
you
So
ever work together, like that'll be good. And that moment was such a great moment, and they were all really great in that. And then to have it like just completely torn apart by the end, there is really no coming. Like we've said that a lot, or people have said that certainly in the final season, where it's like, well, there's no coming back from that. But I'm like, that conversation in the boardroom, I felt like there's no coming back from that. Like I think Kendall and Shiv would maybe be like Logan and Ewan by the end, right? Like if they ever like got to talk again, like I don't think they're like ever going to be on the same page or like each other again. And like I love them, I guess, basically kind of would be the eulogy. And like Roman, I think would probably bounce back a little bit with them both, especially Shiv, but like I do think that was like an irreparable breach of trust that Kendall like pulled back on, that he had killed the cater waiter. So I don't know. I'm glad
well,
it's
I mean, like
over.
Roman also, I love their like throwaway reveal about Kendall's infertility too.
Great
Like
moment.
we already knew Sophie was adopted, but then just the other one is a product of Rava and a filing cabinet guy,
A great moment. Uh
yeah.
really good. And even then when like Shiv is like basically killing Kendall, right? Which he says to her, like, this is it. Like, I literally am dead, right? And like this, and she rolls her eyes. But even in that moment when Roman's like, also you're a fucking loser and the kids aren't yours, like she was like, stop. Like she like was like, whoa, pull back.
And he's like, that's what Logan said.
Just
But then
saying what
also
Dad said.
remember
I'm just saying
in
what
like
Dad
Four on
said.
the Floor, he says to Tom, it's like, oh, are you like, when you're gonna give me a grandkid, or are you shooting blanks?
Mhm.
Right. So
Uh,
yeah.
great show. We'll
But
talk more about like, anything else. We should move on. We have a lot of emails later to talk about Succession. So
I guess did you think Kendall was gonna die or go in the water? Because I never thought they were gonna kill off any of the kids. I saw a lot of theories
no,
beforehand that someone was gonna die. I'm like, no, the only person I ever expected to die on the show was Logan. And they did that. I,
it
I
just
don't think
wasn't that kind of show.
it's not
It,
that kind
no,
of show. Yeah.
it would have made,
So
it would have been like really cheap, I think, for him to actually have died. I would argue.
yeah, and I think this is even more tragic because again, like they co-signed their own deaths, so they're just stuck.
Yeah,
Um,
they're all doomed. It was
yeah.
absolutely a very tragic ending. Way
And then
more
in your
powerful
mind,
than
you could pretend that he jumped in or eventually,
yeah.
so
He would have never. But the thing is, he wouldn't have gotten in. Like we saw, Colin was there, like glooming over
yeah,
him.
yeah.
Like
He became Logan, but not the Logan he wanted. So, and then
absolutely.
it's a great tie-in back to the season 1 finale because Colin is the one who covered the waiter death for him.
It's
So
also a great cover to, I think that's at season 1 or 2. Is it episode 1 or 2 of this season when they're walking up in Central Park, right? And look,
yeah,
it's the same
and when
shot
he goes
of
to
like
dinner with Colin.
he
So
is his best friend Colin, and then like there's a scene where Logan is walking and Colin's like 10 feet behind him, and it's the same shot of Kendall doing it. Like he did actually become his dad in all the wrong ways, sold every bit of his soul to do that, and then didn't end up with Waystar at the end at all, and is just now doomed to be his dad. But like that's it, with nothing, none of the cachet,
that's it. Like
basically.
it's worse than death.
Definitely. Uh, speaking. So now we'll get to the comedies, Joyce. We had a great segue. Fate worse
Great
than death.
laughers here.
Uh, you want to do? We could do Maisel, I guess, quickly. That was the first one.
It was first, also on Friday. So
Uh, I love this final season, and I thought the finale was just great. Totally satisfying.
I thought the finale was great. I think I would have liked the season more to be about Susie and Midge than just the stuff we got towards the end. So I think there's a lot of like extraneous stuff throughout the season too, which like it wasn't bad, it was just like there. So I think the best episodes were the Testarossa deal,
Great episode.
and the finale.
Same. Those are my favorite ones. Love the story structure of those ones. Love like the Susie and Midge stuff. But yeah, I thought the finale was like very indulgent, but like really good. I don't know. I thought it stuck the landing. I loved I thought like I read a lot of post-show interviews and I loved Reed Scott on the show, but I did find a lot of Gordon's like behavior and then also his like immediate turn on a dime felt like very like we just got to write ourselves out of this kind of corner we put
You
ourselves
mean
in.
like when they're taping the show?
Yes. I just didn't think like he immediately goes from like a sulking asshole to like that was the greatest thing I ever heard. And it's like, you know, it wasn't the greatest thing I ever heard, but also like he just maybe should have had like they had to do that for what was happening.
They had to have him say the marvelous Mrs. Maisel.
Obviously a great moment, but I just felt like they dug him in too hard. Kind of like it's definitely not the same, but like it reminded me a little of like we've talked about like Ted Lasso and Nate, where it just is like they put him in too much into the ground and then like needed this pivot to happen and in a quick fashion. And Reed Scott, God bless him, does it, but like it just felt like kind of phony to me that moment a little.
I kind of don't also feel like they really needed him to renege on her coming on the show and then being like, oh, actually, you're going to just be a talking guest on stools. I
Very
think
strange.
they went through so much trouble having Midge convince Susie to convince his wife, Nina Arianda's character.
Hetty, I think her name was.
Yeah, to convince him to let her on the show. And they did that. And then it's like, he's like, no, you're just gonna be a guest. And I don't know if they really need it. I guess they want it for the drama of the 4 minutes.
I assume, but like you're right. Like
I'd
it just
rather
felt,
just like have her do the set and then, you know, and also that wasn't 4 minutes. That was way more than 4
it was way
minutes.
more than 4 minutes. It was movie magic 4 minutes. I would say like I agree. I'm not gonna tell Amy Sherman Palladino how to write her show, but just to tell her how to write her show, basically, I would say like if you didn't have the throat clearing of them doing the bit and like setting up that tension, which wasn't really tension because we know she's gonna succeed.
Yeah, you're like, you know, she's gonna do it. You know,
it just felt like you could have had him being annoyed. Like a more reasonable turn for him, I think, would have been to be incredibly annoyed that he has to do this.
right?
And then,
but
like,
then being impressed by her set.
Exactly. And that's kind of what happens. But the way they get there, it feels like a little rushed because he's been so immediately won and then he has to do a quick 180 basically to the other
Yeah.
side.
And I kind of feel like they also wanted Midge to have that moment of being like, I'm gonna go rogue. I'm gonna do this.
That absolutely.
Like, even though I don't have permission to do this.
Because you end up with that great line from Susie where she's like, this started with you on a stage no one told you to get on, right? Like, that's a great line. And like, it's work. Like, I'm fine with the way it did because I'm like, all the stuff that it does is great. Like, that line is great. The performances are great. But I'm just like, from a story standpoint, I just found that a little rushed. But I love the finale so much. And I really do still think that like Rachel Brosnahan could win. I don't know. I thought she was great.
That was, her performance like during Midge's set was great. And I love how the lighting, the cinematography in that was great too, because they just did a callback to her performances at the Gaslight.
Really good.
Yeah, and I love the ending, the flash forward to 2005.
So good.
They're friends again, watching Jeopardy on VHS.
Loved it so much.
Just talking, chatting away. So
and like it was like about their relationship and like
that's why I want more from the season of them.
Yeah.
So.
But yeah, overall successful season. Like I've now changed back to Tony Shalhoub getting in. I don't agree with him, but I understand why he'll get in because he does have like a really good episode, I guess. I just don't like the character. And I don't think it's like
you can't anti-dict someone just because you don't like the character.
I know, that's why I put him back in. But I will say, like, the idea that like we're supposed to do like cartwheels because Abe realized that women are smart is like, who gives a shit? I don't know. I just was like, I get it. Like, you know, like okay.
It was just, I mean, that's just like who he is. And it's like I also like when he's mortified, embarrassed in that restaurant when his wife, Marion Hingle, is right about the play that they saw.
Right.
Like there's no deeper meaning and he has
really
to
fun.
apologize. to her. But yeah, I think Rachel would be a deserving winner. I don't know if they'll go back to her just because the show is older, and it feels like it's just one of those older shows that will get a ton of nominations, but its winning days in terms of above the line are kind of over.
It could be very right. I just feel like the only reason I'm predicting her still is I just don't think any of these, and this will get me yelled at because people are saying I don't like Abbott or whatever. I'm like, I just don't think any of the other contenders are strong enough really on their own. And so I think having her be a past winner in a great final season would help her there. Like, that's all. I think she's like, there's reasons to predict her over like.
I think there are too. I just don't know if they would go back to her.
Right.
I think like,
no, go ahead.
Like I think like Quinta, I do have her basically as like a placeholder,
right.
Really. Like I'm not gonna be upset if she won or anything,
no.
But it's like again, like if Jean Smart were here, I would just have her in first.
Just a no-brainer. Then Jean Smart would win, right? Like, obviously. Yeah. So it's just like finding someone else who would. So do you have? So I have her obviously getting nominated, Alex and Tony Shalhoub and Luke Kirby for guest actor. Do you think anybody else from this would get in from this final season?
Did I put Hank Azaria in? I think I did. Yes, I put him in a couple weeks ago. So
he's good. He was very good.
Yeah, I don't know if Hank will get in. I think Luke will get in.
Luke should definitely.
I really like the way they handled the Lenny Bruce of it all. And how they showed his penultimate performance, and then they had that flashback to like their dinner from last season. And like you get like the coda to his and Midge's relationship, and you see the foreshadowing of what's to come tragically in real life for him. So I like that they didn't. I don't think I wouldn't have been upset if they covered his death like on the show, but I don't think they needed to. So I thought it was well done.
Me too. I really like that too. And I love the flashback to them like in the restaurant. I thought that was really good, and a good way to tie back to the fourth season finale, basically, of like showing like a little more of forward and what happened there. So I have the four of them getting in, but I don't know. Hank Azaria, I think, could get in. I really would love Reed Scott to get in. I just love him so much. He would be supporting actor for sure, right? Like, he's not a guest.
Yeah, I don't know. Again, I think because like the show is older, I don't know about like these like new characters, like people who joined the show mid-run getting in. So
well, also I would say Michael Zegan, I think, would be a deserving nominee too, but I don't think he'll get in either.
No. Too bad. Yeah. I just have Tony in there. Like, I think they'll have the core trio.
I think so.
I think Luke will get in, and then like maybe Hank Azaria.
I mean, Hank Azaria is good. He plays like Danny Kaye.
I just put him in there. I don't know why. I don't even know who I dropped to put him in there.
So that's Mrs. Maisel. And then Joyce, do you want your beloved Barry? I feel like the buzz online was a little not as euphoric as it was for Succession for the finale.
No, but that was expected. Like, it's been like that all season, and Barry was never as big as Succession. So it's fine, but obviously just went straight into Barry after Succession for me. Great 2 hours of my life on Sunday. Great finale. I think it's been somewhat divisive among fans and viewers from what I've seen the past 2 days, but I thought it was perfect because it was a sick joke in the end for them, or just like the show, or Hollywood as it's portrayed in the show, to do the movie of Barry and Jean and portray Barry as this tragic hero instead of a hitman murderer. And it just goes back to the whole show's theme and just evisceration of the performative nature of Hollywood and the artifice of it. And just I like the pairing of the two finales too, between Succession and Barry, because it's about on Barry, it's about like how Hollywood can distort the truth and distort reality with the way they tell stories. It's like the Mask Collector, which they should have made for real, and it should have been uploaded to Max right away after the finale so I could watch it. Like, that is obviously not what happened at all in the show's world, but that's what sells. And it's like this like super like Clint Eastwoody type of movie that they made about Barry. And it's great because like that's the version of the story that sells, and that's what Barry wanted. He wanted his Hollywood ending, and he got that. And I think, you know, some people who don't like the Succession finale, they wanted something a little bit more finite, whether it's like someone dying or one of the kids winning the job, or I don't know, like whatever. It's a little bit more open-ended, and you know, like Barry is dunking on all of that, you know, like how people love happy endings and redemption and that type of stuff. Like as we've talked about a lot with the Oscars, like that sells better than downers or open-ended ruminations on ideas or like nuanced examinations. You know, like people don't want to think, they want to be handheld. So I really loved just them, like the last 3 minutes of that fake movie being the finale, closing the show, and we just, you know, it's just calling everyone out, like how we're just obsessed with these neat narratives that are not reality. And then that's our thing, like they're creating their reality of the movie. And then in Succession, remember in the pilot when Logan tells Kendall why he's not fit for the job, and he's like, you need to remake the world in your image, you need to make your own reality, and Kendall can't do that. Like Logan did that. Like that's why he's successful. Like that's why all these rich 1%ers are successful. Like they don't give a shit about everything else. Like what's real in their world is real. And so I really like that. I'm sad both of these shows ended because I love them so much, but I love that both of them, they're so cynical about the worlds they satirize, and I love how both of their finales kind of connected to one another.
Definitely. One thing, Joyce, you've been on Stephen Root the whole season, and I feel like
I kind of want to keep him now.
I think you maybe could. I think you could get away with keeping him, and he could get in. That was my big takeaway.
I mean, it was so great. And I know some people are like, why did he just run off after dropping off Barry's kid to him? But I'm like, that because like he's trying to do right by Barry finally.
Right.
So, but yeah, he was great in his scene with Anthony Carrigan. Tremendous. I really want Anthony Carrigan to win, and he's not going to win, and it's going to be upsetting. So,
I mean, if Stephen Root got in, that would be the two of them getting in seems like possible, certainly, right? I mean,
the three of them with Henry Winkler have gone in before,
right,
once 4 years ago, but Stephen didn't get in last year. So I basically had just been hope dicting Stephen all season, and even having seen 7 of the episodes, you know, with the screeners, I was like, I think I want him to get in, so I'm just gonna hope dict him. But like after the finale and that scene, I'm like, I don't know, maybe it's just the afterglow of it. I'm like, I think he get in, but
so, like
the reality is probably not.
We differ on like some of these people, right, in this category, but I'm like, I kept Phil Dunster in. I think he can get in for Ted Lasso, especially after the finale. I just think it's like he's had a really great season, and I think Ebon Moss-Bachrach could get in too. So then I'm like, maybe Harrison Ford doesn't get in, even though he's like in 4th in the odds, and Stephen Root gets in over Harrison Ford.
I mean, listen, one of them has been nominated before,
so
I don't know. Yeah, I have made no changes to that. And wait, so who did you drop to put?
Chris Perfetti, I dropped for Abbott.
Yeah, I've had him in forever too, but I can see him not making it. So
I think he can make it, but I do think that the Phil Dunster and Jamie Tart had such a good season, and I think, like we have said, which we'll talk about with Ted Lasso, it doesn't feel like, I don't think voters are just going to turn their back on it, and it does feel like an easy to imagine that he would fill like the Toheem Jamo spot this year, because like Sam did not have as much to do, but Jamie definitely did, and so like you could just flip them out basically for each other.
Yeah. Do you think Steven would be helped by his guest appearance on Succession?
No, I don't think people even remember him on it, honestly.
I was just so happy to see him there because I was like not expecting him at all. And I was like, just a great night for Steven Root on
I feel
HBO.
like they have like, there's like, I saw like a meme going around. I'm gonna get the figures wrong, but basically like season 2 of Ted Lasso was like 420 minutes or whatever it was, and season 3 of Ted Lasso was like 670 minutes or something, I think, or whatever
Oh,
it
yeah.
was.
Well,
But
it's easily, I was talking about this with someone the other day. Like, it's easily the longest comedy series this year because it has the most episodes already. And then almost every episode is over an hour.
so I was thinking like Succession, my sense of Succession is that all of these episodes in this final season had like 20 minutes of good material that they probably just left out, and that you could have made like just an incredible like extra long season of Succession here in this final season with like more Stephen Root, more Justin Kirk, I'm sure, like more Jerry certainly, and more J. Smith Cameron. I'm like, man, what might have been? It was perfect, but what might
Yeah,
have been?
they've talked about how there was a whole subplot in the Norway episode of the executives foraging for mushrooms. It was like
I
their
mean,
Hunger Games.
just
They
wonderful.
just cut that all out. But if that show were Ted Lasso, that would have been in there, and the episode would have been 2 hours long.
Yeah,
So,
true.
well, that's the other thing I love about Barry is it's so economical in its
Yes.
storytelling. Like every episode is 30 minutes. The finale was a little bit longer, which is fine. I'm fine with
I
finales
think it
being
was
long.
36 minutes though. It wasn't
Yeah,
like long.
super long, 36 minutes, but it's um yeah, like they and like having read interviews with or listened to interviews with Bill Hader over the years, like he is very diligent about cutting stuff that's not working. Like he is not married to his darlings.
No.
So and he listens to his editors because he's said a lot of times that his editors just be like, yeah, I don't think this works. I think we should cut this. And he'd be like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. So like, let's get rid of it, even though I really like this and I thought it was really funny. So and I think that tightness really works in a story and a show like Barry, which does have so many tonal pivots.
Mm-hmm.
And it never really merges them. And I think that's what confuses people about the show because it is not a dramedy.
No.
It is a very, very dark tragicomedy. But like when it's funny, it's like hysterically funny. Like it just has absurd comedic bits, like super Looney Tunes, like the shootout in the finale, the
Mm-hmm.
fucking rocket
Mm-hmm.
last week, which I watched like 10 times. And then like all their action scenes are shot from a distance because it's like they're not trying to make anyone look cool. It's like these are just like dumb people involved in the criminal underbelly, and like he always talks about like how Barry's an idiot. So I love that too, that like Barry's final moment, like he just says, oh wow, after Gene shoots him.
Great moment.
Yeah. And
Oh,
then
yeah.
and then that, oh my god, that composition too of both the compositions of Hank holding onto the statue, the Chris Ball's statue hand, and then Gene sitting on a couch and then Barry dead perpendicular to him. Just great compositions. Carl Hersey should win cinematography too.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like I love that it was just a brisk 36 minutes and 3 of those were just a fake movie.
Do you think so would any chance that like it wins any of these top line awards?
No.
No.
You know how much I want him to win directing, Bill Hader, and he directed every episode this season, but I feel like I need to let that dream go because it's not gonna win series. And that category is so linked to the series frontrunner. And if there are triple nominees from the series frontrunner, then it goes to the runner-up. And I don't think Barry is the runner-up, sadly. I don't think he's going to actor, even though I would love him to. I think that's Jeremy Allen White. And I think this season, between him directing everything and writing a bulk of the episodes, like Bill is not on screen a lot in the season.
Right.
So, and I think he likes it that way too. So like he's not in the finale that much either. Like he basically goes, oh my God, the hysterical scene of him buying the guns,
Mhm.
going like super Coen brothers and then struggling out of the car. And then he dies, and then you get this, the denouement with Sally. So I hope Sarah Goldberg gets back in. She deserves.
I have her in. I think she will.
Yeah, I think she'd be helped by the restricted ballot. And I think I'm most pleased by, and I expected him to do this, but I'm most pleased by the show doing right by Sally, because she, like many quote unquote unlikable woman, has taken a lot of hits on the internet, and people don't like that character. But I love that Bill has always been very defensive of Sally, and like she is the least bad of everyone in that cast or the show, the characters, because her worst crime is just being a narcissistic actress, and
Right.
that's it.
Right.
And then she killed someone in self-defense last season.
Right.
So I like that she gets like sort of a happy ending, like she's teaching theater in a high school now, but you could still see that she's still a narcissist too, like in the scene with she like rebuffs the guy hitting on her. So yeah, she and Anthony really deserve to win, and I don't think they're gonna win. So
The
but
nomination will be the reward, maybe.
I have all of them getting in right now. And I don't think they're gonna win anything, sadly. But you know what? Bill is gonna win his 4th DGA.
Yes.
So
And then finally, Joyce, Ted Lasso. The finale's on right now. It's Wednesday. We're recording this. I just watched it this morning. You did too.
I started it at 7:51 a.m.
Wow.
because they pushed back the drop
They
at the
did.
last minute yesterday, because normally they do it early Tuesdays at 9 p.m. Eastern, but then
they also did not release a screener for.
No, they didn't, because I would have watched the screener. Yeah, they didn't do that. I didn't expect them to, but I thought I had no reason not to believe it wouldn't drop at 9, but then last minute they changed it to midnight. So
and kind of went exactly as how we have discussed all season. Definitely felt like the end of Jason Sudeikis playing Ted Lasso, but that the show would continue on without Jason Sudeikis as Ted Lasso.
And then the super meta note to Trent.
It was never about Ted in his book.
Yeah, changed the title.
So it's now The Richmond Way, which seems like a great title for a new spin-off series. Yeah, I thought it was like, I thought the last 3 episodes of the season were quite good, but to get to these last 3 episodes was a chore. A lot of detours and a lot of extraneous plots that ended up maybe paying off in the finale and what could have been like the series finale, but also could have been done, I think, in a more economical fashion and gotten the same result. The Nate stuff completely whiffed and didn't even bother really giving him a great redemption moment with Ted. I mean, I know they have like a couple of scenes together, and
that was like an accidental apology
and a couple of like meaningful looks.
Yeah, it wasn't Nate coming up to him.
And again, I think I maybe mentioned this. We talked about this like last week, but I was like, I definitely get the sense because they wrote the first 2 seasons together, and for whatever, like they did not mean for the Nate betrayal to have such a large impact probably on the show, but because of the way people like really liked Nate, I think in the first season, and then also because of the way Nick Mohammed was so good at playing Nate, that ended up having such a massive impact. The betrayal was such a big deal that they never were really going to reckon with anyway, I kind of think. And then that's what you end up with here, which is just like, it felt like kind of tossed together.
Yeah, and then one of the issues this season, as we've discussed in some of the previous episodes, for as long as the episodes are, we're missing important scenes and moments between characters. Like we did not see Nate quitting.
That was a stylistic choice they made over and over again this season, and
yeah,
I would love to know why.
And then the beginning of the next episode, the penultimate episode, you have the guys coming to his girlfriend's restaurant being like, oh, we discussed it amongst the team and we want it back. Why didn't we see that discussion?
And in the finale, the discussion between Ted and Rebecca doesn't happen.
No, like we don't see the conclusion to the cliffhanger of last week of him telling her he is leaving. Okay, fine. But then why didn't we have a scene of him telling the team that he's leaving. It's like
Exactly.
they already, like when the show opens, the finale opens, like he's already told the team and they've already accepted it. Nate has already returned to work. Like nothing ever happened between
It,
seasons 1 and 3. Like,
like a very absolutely stylistic choice to do this because it's constant in the show, right? Like you're saying, like we like that's like 5 examples of them not showing these like key moments.
yeah.
And I'm just like, I don't know. I think that's a fun trick to do once. Like it's kind of cool to do
Yeah.
once and like trust the audience to understand that what's happened here, so we don't need to see it. And we've seen that scene play out a million different times in a million different sports movies and a million different shows. But doing it like 5 times over the course of like 3 episodes does feel a little
Yeah, and it would
unfulfilling.
be okay not to show something, like you said, like if it's like it makes sense like within like what you've already set up um in like the narrative and the story, and like you don't want to be repetitive. But like with Nathan specifically, like they didn't really do any setup at all, because like his redemption had nothing to do with the team or the job aspect of it, right? It was just him getting a girlfriend. And like we saw that he was like miserable at the job, like being at West Ham, which like you could have predicted. But there was like no conflict between him and Richmond, or even that much between him and Rupert. Like it's just like Rupert like inviting him out on a night on the town, and then he's like, oh, I don't want to hang out with him tonight and those girls, and I'm gonna quit, and we don't see that.
So like here was the thing I thought too, and again, I hazard to tell these very talented writers how to write their show, but to tell them how to do it. In the finale of Ted Lasso, Rupert comes down to tell the coach to take out Jamie's legs and like hurt him, and the coach says "fuck you" and I'm not doing it. And it's like a great moment with the coach, and he's a, I forget his name, but he's obviously been an announcer on the show, so you've seen him like repeatedly before in like a very small like Greek chorus type thing. But he stands up to Rupert, and then like basically Rupert just tells him to fuck off and pushes him, and then he gets booed off the field. And I'm like, that should have been for Nate at an earlier episode to like show, like, rather than like you said, like the thing that turns Nate on West Ham is going out with Rupert, who's a total like asshole and like cheating on his wife and like
Yeah.
asking Nate to cheat on his girlfriend that he just met. And like he's like, oh, I don't like this, I quit. But a much better and more believable thing, I think, would have been to have that scene with Rupert asking Nate to hurt another player, and then Nate has to like reconcile probably with having learned the Lasso way, or the Richmond way, as we learned it's called. That's not something he wants to do. And again, I don't know. I just felt like that was just like totally botched, the Nate stuff.
Yeah, because we don't see, because we're robbed of that, of the scene of him quitting, we don't see Rupert's reaction. Like we have no idea how he feels about him quitting.
Right. They never even have another moment. I thought too,
Yeah.
walking off the field, he was going to maybe do something with Nate, or acknowledge Nate, and he doesn't. So it just felt
Yeah.
like that whole, again, that whole thing was botched. All that said, like I said, I think the finale was pretty solid overall, and the last 3 episodes were good. So I think it'll have no problem winning series. Like I have no doubt that it'll win comedy series now.
I mean, it definitely is going to make people cry,
Yeah,
the
I did
finale.
not cry. I'll tell you what part I really loved is, and again, we're spoiling all these shows. If you've gotten this far, holy shit, and you're mad that we're spoiling Ted Lasso, Godspeed. But at the end, I really loved them all pulling out the pieces of the sign and putting it together. I
Oh
was
my
like, that's a
God.
great sports
Of
movie
course you did.
moment. That was a great sports movie moment. It was. That was awesome. It was so good.
I love like one of them just had it like in his socks. I'm like, you're playing
Yes,
with
I think
that.
Billy had it in his socks. Billy
But
Harris, or Colin, I guess, is
yeah,
the character.
I mean, sure. Like it's, like cheesy, but like fine. But yeah, and like, they obviously set it up earlier with Nate staring at the blank space on the wall.
Yes.
And then again, like that scene, I'm just like, that's not even him taking the initiative to go up to Ted to apologize. And you would hope that since he's already back on the team, that they already had this conversation, but apparently they hadn't. And okay, they hadn't, but it should have still been him knowing that Ted is leaving now. He should make amends before Ted leaves. But it's like, oh, Ted just going home, and he sees him in the locker room. So he comes in, and it's like, oh, by the way, I'm sorry.
Absolutely. I totally agree. None of that worked. None of the Nate stuff worked at all. And none of the work the whole season. And then like, it felt like they spent a lot of time on it and also rushed it at the
Mhm.
end. And yeah, I thought Jason was good in the finale. I thought Hannah Waddingham was exceptional in the finale, and I could actually see her winning now too, coming back to win, even though that's another character they really kind of like set stuff up for that never paid off. Like they never really went back to, I guess we're supposed, because she ends up with like the guy, the pilot who she had met and
The
his
Dutch
daughter.
guy.
That's like her being a mom. Like I just was like, none of that stuff with the psychic.
No.
I'm assuming it all paid off and connected, but I'm just like, no, I don't know. I didn't buy that either. But at the same time, I thought she was awesome on it, and I could see her winning over Shirley Lee Ralph if they
Like she
go
had
full Ted.
the goodbye scene with Ted was good. Like she has good moments, but yeah, like I agree that her entire arc this season, not the best. And then I'm just like not a fan of just like introducing, this like motherhood storyline for her out of nowhere, really, this season. And then it's like they closed it a little bit, but then they just kept like bringing it back, and it's like never really been established prior to the season that this is something she wanted, right?
Yeah.
And then to have her just run into the Dutch guy who turns out to have a daughter, and now she has like her happy family. I'm like, okay, just really making a pat ending here for her. And then on the flip side, you have Keely just like not, I mean, I'm fine with her not choosing either of Jamie or Roy, but they didn't have a good explanation for it.
Right.
And they never really had a good explanation for why she and Roy broke up either.
I mean, she and Roy broke up because Roy wanted to break up, right? Like, I guess that was.
And like he like says like in his letter that like it's me, but like they never like again like on the show it's never discussed and
She
addressed.
really had no reason to want to go back with Jamie. I felt like they didn't really buy.
And it was kind of weird that they just made this, like they forced this love triangle in the finale out of nowhere. Like I thought they were past that. Like I did not expect them to do that, especially with last week's episode when they were stalking Jamie. And like that was a fun dynamic. But then like all of a sudden Roy is like threatened by Jamie.
And I did like that Roy and Jamie ended up fine. Like that was fine. I felt like that was good. And they were the best relationship of the show this season. I felt like the two of them. And that's why I want Phil Dunster to get in, because I was like, he was so good with Brett. And I think Brett will win Brett and Hugo on Succession. Woof woof. And total dogs, the two of them. Yeah, I thought it was, like I said, I thought the finale was good overall. And I think the way it ends is clearly setting up a show without Ted. And that they could have Jason Sudeikis be like a guest star and do like, if they ever write it again, or who knows. It took so long for this season to come out. It took them like a year, I think they were filming it. But like, assuming the writer's strike ends and assuming like they come back, they'll have like the Richmond Way spinoff show, like a season 4 of Ted Lasso without Ted. And they'll have like Roy running the team and all the same shenanigans that they've been setting up, and like Ted will just be like a guest star that they phone in on FaceTime at the end of the season or something.
Just like Sarah Niles, and then he brought her back to jump on the bed. So
right.
Yeah.
I definitely think I don't think it's gonna end. I absolutely don't think that was a series finale.
Well, like they've been so cagey about it, and it's like the whole rollout of this season was weird because they don't want to talk about whether it's not the last season, and even like all the stuff yesterday when they changed the time and then the way they were positioning the marketing is like it's the final game, right? But the production designer, he Instagrammed yesterday too that like the sets were being torn down, so like like who knows, but it's, I mean, obviously Apple would want it to continue.
Yeah.
It's their top show, it's their most successful show. Like there's no reason for them not to want it to continue. And this is, this was Jason's 3 season arc that he always wanted to do. So he did it. So, and they've been very specific about the way they've talked about that, like this is Jason's story, like, and never specifically saying like he wants to end the show after 3 seasons.
Right.
So
I guess the thing that surprised me about the finale is that I was actually shocked at how much they set up another show. Like they went out of their way to set up like Rebecca still owns the team. Roy is the manager. They could do a ladies Richmond show, which would be another spinoff that Keeley could run, right? Like all these different things that they kind of set up in the finale are just screaming that they would continue the show. Like I was surprised at how much it was like, oh yeah, no, this is not even close to ending, like at all.
But like at the same time, they could just end with that because they did that montage because it's like, yeah, it's like you see. I think that's what people want to like. You see where these people end up, like, and you don't get that from Succession.
Right,
you know,
right.
It's still kind of open ended. So it's like you see Beard and Jane get married.
Contentious that Ted wasn't there. What would you say to that?
Yeah,
Narratively, because they needed to show him at the end with his kid that had at the end, so they couldn't show Ted at the wedding if he was also going to come back to show at the end. So
yeah, it kind of reminds me of when Dr. Green died on ER, and Doug and Carol were not at his funeral because George Clooney and Juliana Margulies did not come back for that. So it's like, why weren't they there? You know, but at the same time, like, sure, like I've missed some of my friends' weddings. Like maybe if there's a conflict, maybe it was his kid's soccer game.
maybe it was, or it could have all been a dream because, like I said, Ted wakes up on the
Wakes
plane.
up, so you could think it's a dream, but or maybe it's just a 6 feet under thing, but no one dies.
It's Ted's death dream. He's in a doom loop like Kendall.
Yeah. So, but I think like I think for the most part, fans especially would be satisfied with it. I think if you've enjoyed the season of Ted Lasso, you would enjoy the finale.
And yeah, I enjoyed the finale. I thought the season was like definitely the worst of the three, but I think the last three episodes were good and the finale was solid. And I think I did put Hannah Waddingham back in first. I did not move Jason back up because I just don't think he could beat Jeremy Allen White. But I would not be surprised if he wins because it is probably his final time playing Ted in a full-time capacity.
I think it'll just be Jeremy.
I think it'll be Jeremy. I didn't switch him, but I could see it. I could easily see him winning again, Jason Sudeikis.
He like he was definitely in the finale more than he was in the previous or a lot of the previous episodes, just because they had to wrap this stuff up.
His best moment in the whole season was episode 9, though, or whatever, 9, episode 12. Jesus Christ, this season was so many episodes, or 11, whatever it was. Episode 11 with Becky M. Baker. I thought he was like really good in that scene, and I thought that was like a great moment for Ted as a character. So I feel like that would be.
It was a good moment, but I wish they had done more to get there. I think that's like the main thing with the you know what the season is.
Yeah,
this just came to me. The season is like if you're in a screenwriting 101 class and the assignment was to write a scene from Ted Lasso, a spec scene, not a spec script, just a scene. And everyone in the class has seen Ted Lasso, loves Ted Lasso. They know the characters and their voices and how to write in their voice. So they all write these great scenes with their own narratives in mind. And they hand them in, the professor reads them. It's like, these are all great. Let's just cobble them all together into one season of a show. And individually, the moments are great, but cohesively, or it's not cohesive, like all strung together, it doesn't make sense because everyone has their own narratives for the scene they wrote and their own story points working. So that's why it feels like we're missing scenes from certain storylines, like the Nate stuff, you know, and so that's why it doesn't really work. But then like for a viral moment, you know, a 2-minute scene of like Roy's press conference works great.
Joyce, we've talked for so long. We have so many emails. So let's do some emails here before we wrap up. Email us at slugfest@goldderby.com. A lot of our faves have emailed in since last week. So we'll start with Faisal, who we love. His Succession drama guest actress question. Very specific.
Okay.
What do you make of the guest actress, Succession's guest actress race at this point? Now he sent this on Saturday, so before the finale. I currently have Hiama Boss, Harriet Walter, and Cherry Jones in that order getting in. I was also thinking about the possibility of Zoe Winters, since she had so many great moments this season. However, since she is in exactly 5 episodes before the finale, and she was in the finale, would she even be eligible? If not, is there a chance she could somehow make it into supporting, given especially if she somehow plays a major role in the events of the finale? So she was in the finale, not a major role, but a great sight gag when Connor called her second string mourners, basically.
Yeah, and she was in the virtual dinner.
And she was in the virtual dinner.
Logan's
I
show.
thought of dropping Cherry Jones because she did not come back. I agree. Hiama Boss and Harriet Walter would definitely get in. I think Marcia was the best of the whole season still, so I would hopefully think she could win, maybe. But I have all three of them getting in, and I would put Zoe Winters in supporting actress, but I don't think she'll make it in. That was my take.
No, I don't think Zoe would make it into supporting. I have the three of them too. I think Cherry would still make it. I think even though it does feel like her appearance that in the premiere was 7,000 years ago, I think because we know the show was seen and watched, like they will remember her, or like once they come across her name on their ballot, they'll remember it. And she's obviously won for the show before. So I have the three of them getting in right now. I would like Harriet to win too, just because she's number one for this before. I love her in the finale.
Face
Face
eggs.
yeah.
Face eggs, Joyce.
And I love also her, it's like a underrated moment of her in the kitchen when they're making the meal fit for a king, and she's just like, like kind of like, this is nice, like seeing them like they were kids again, right? And she knows like she was not the best mother, and then like all of her stuff, they're like, why do you have to go back? Like, who cares? Like, like why do you have to take a boardroom meeting? Just stay here.
And like, I think I'm not the first person to say this, but I love when the grown-ups make fun of the way the children talk. So last season we had Logan in the finale being like talking, doing Shiv's voice, and then here we had Caroline doing Kendall's a board meeting, just very, very funny.
Well, a lot of people mocked Kendall this episode.
Certainly, but like I thought it was really funny having her do it. I just thought that was really good. Yeah, maybe she should win for face eggs. Certainly, that was the best.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? She's right.
It's gross.
Honestly.
Eyes are gross.
Eyes are gross.
Next up, email from Uri. Uri here again. I have a lot of feelings and thoughts after the week of ending. Sorry for the length in advance. So I'm just warning you, Joyce. This one's long. I'll try to skim it, and we could, because there's certain stuff here I think we could get to. But this is Uri writes, I think Yellowjackets ended badly, and the finale really soured my view of an Ari hit and miss season. And I think it may not affect nominations, but it will affect the chances it had to win. I do think Simone Kessler did a great job and should be considered as a possibility for nomination. Kind of similar thoughts. I maybe liked it a little more than Uri, but I like the finale actually a decent amount. I thought the season was hit and miss though.
Yeah, and I don't know if like I didn't have it winning anything before finale. So I mean, I did have Melanie Linsky in first before Sour Smoke moved there.
I think people still have Melanie in first, maybe.
If they haven't updated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next up for Uri was the Maisel finale was great. The final scene between Midge and Susie really drove home the message of the show. And Midge's final stand-up was a great one and a perfect evolution for her and from her first. In the tape system, the episode probably gives the win to Rachel. And Tony Shalhoub is also totally getting nominated on merit thanks to the speech about his poor treatment to Midge he had the episode before. Do you think that would have been...
Are they calling you out?
Uri doesn't even say it, but I feel it. I feel that. But yeah, I mean, like, I think that could have been a great tape for Rachel, and she maybe would have won for it.
She probably will submit this anyway, like for this her nomination this year. But tapes don't really matter in his system. So,
Next up for Uri was Barry. Perfect final episode.
Yes.
So surprising yet obvious in the best way. I love that he let Sally find happiness. Sarah should win the Emmy. Stephen Root and Anthony Carrigan should tie and give Bill his directing Emmy for the finale already. This season, he really took a step back in screen time for himself and focused on the directing, and he should be rewarded for that.
This is my burner account, by the way.
Guess so.
Yeah.
You could just tell me this stuff.
I thought I just did 20 minutes ago.
You did. It's true.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know, like ditto or. Yeah, I mean, Bill has already won actor twice, so I don't need him to win that category. And yeah, he wasn't on screen. Not that screen time is the most important thing, but he wasn't on screen a lot this season. And it just like if Anthony does not win an Emmy for NoHo Hank, it will be painful for Bill not to win a directing Emmy for the show.
Right.
But I think it's not looking good just based on that Branch's habits of late. So I don't even know like what would have to happen in the category for him to win, because I guess like maybe Ted getting 3 nominations there, so it would be a vote split. And then obviously the multicam slot nominee is not going to win, so that's 4. So then Barry is 5. So then you need like 2 more. So, but like the Bear is going to get, I think like the Bear can win. The Bear is going to get nominated. And then another one, I don't know, like Only Murders, Abbott didn't get in last year. I don't know. Like, I don't know
How many do you think the Bear could get?
For directing?
Yeah.
I don't know how many they're submitting, but I think it's gonna get in at least 1 episode in directing. So I mean, like Barry can only get in 1 for directing because he directed all of them.
Right.
So, and last year they were very focused on him. They specifically only because he and Alec Burt split them, and they only submitted 710 North for Barry last year, and he lost. So.
Yep. More Uri here. A lot of Succession, loved it. He obviously the best. Ended as it was always going to end, as a tragedy. I'll just skip ahead. Uri, I loved what you wrote here, but I'm just in interest of time, because it gets to like award stuff. Sarah and Matthew have the Emmys locked. Kieran is winning in my mind, but he has stiff competition from Jeremy. Harriet Walter has to win just for the jelly ball line. What are the writing, directing submissions of Succession? I presume the writing is the finale for Jesse, but is it Mark Mylod's episode also? He is going to win anyway, I think. He has a lot of options. I don't get people saying it was bad. My money was perfect. Mark Mylod could submit the episode 3, which was Logan's death, the funeral episode, which I thought maybe it was his best, and the finale. I think he'll probably would. I don't know. Like, what do you think it would be?
I don't know, because again, he can only submit 1, so he has options. Did you watch he did the Vanity Fair Anatomy of a Scene thing for Connor's wedding? Great.
Yes.
Highly recommend if anyone hasn't seen it yet. So and I don't know if anyone's asked him in any of the postmortems the past couple of days what he's going to submit.
I would say if I had
or like what he did submit, because it's over, the submission process is over.
I feel like Connor's wedding one is the one they most focused on the directorial flourishes of, because it was like one take and they kind of really structured it that
but
way.
They did the one take in Church and State too. Yes. I don't think he was in the Church and State.
I think that was personally, I think that is his best one though, but I think like I could see him doing Connor's wedding and then Jesse submitting the finale, obviously, for writing.
Jesse has always submitted the finale of every season and has won. So I think he'll do the finale. And they've always only submitted Jesse for writing. Like, that's their strategy. They don't submit anyone else, even though I would love to call Will Tracy an Emmy nominee for writing. He's written some of their best episodes, like Turnhaven. And
he did a tailgate party.
Yeah, he did a tailgate party this year. But yeah, so they'll just do Jesse for writing. I think if they get 3 in directing again, like last year, I don't think it would win directing, just because like no show in this system that has gotten 3 directing nominations has won. Like, they're just so vote splitty.
So hang on, I'm trying to see here.
Like Lorraine Scafaria could get in again.
So Mark Mylod directed the first episode, the 3rd episode,
and then the last 2,
9th and 10th. So I think
and then Andre Perec directed America Decides, and I think Kill List. Yes. Yeah, and he won over Mark for season 2 because he did Hunting.
And then Lorraine Scafaria did Living Plus and Honeymoon States, and her submission is Living Plus. Now, that is my favorite episode of the season. It's not the finale, and I think she'll get nominated again because she was nominated for Too Much Birthday last season. So if she gets in, Mylod gets in with probably Connor's wedding, and then like they could probably get a 3rd one in, right, for
Andre, yeah.
Probably America Decides, because that one was like epic. I do think Mylod could win for Connor's wedding because it's like the most recognized episode of the show before the finale.
I would predict him if they get 2 in. I think it's so hard to do 3, but again, maybe Succession is just such a behemoth. It could be the first to do that and overcome the triple vote split. But I think if they get 3 in, I could just see Mike White winning for The White Lotus. He directed all of them, so he just
would make a lot of sense, right? Like, yeah.
So I really want Mark Mylod to win a directing Emmy. Like, he obviously has Emmys as a producer. So, but Yeah, and the finale would be a good submission too. Like it's like he did the same, like they when he talks about those long scenes, like it's so fascinating to hear him be like, yeah, I don't give direction to the actors, like I just trust them, like they know what to do, like, and it's usually just another one take. It's just a long scene
I
that they
mean,
just
Jeremy said that the scene when like Roman's like we're all bullshit, that was supposed to be the end of the scene. He walks
yeah
in
yeah
and they followed him into the room to have that great line with Frank being like, "You don't have it. You never had it,"
yeah,
basically.
and they don't even use Frank saying you never had it in the show, but you
Right.
see Jeremy reacting to it,
You just
so
hear him say you didn't have it, right, or whatever. Eric Day writes, uh, emailed us at slugfest@goldderby.com. Hey, Joyce and Chris, having just finished the last season of Succession, I wanted to ask you that in a world where Emmy showcase episodes or Emmy tapes mattered, what episodes do you think make the best case for Jeremy, Kieran, and Sarah to win their respective categories? Feel free to highlight other actors whose episodes speak for why they should win. Thanks for answering my question. I thought this was a fun one because we love this kind of like this like
guessing
exercise.
their submissions.
Yes.
I think Sarah should submit Connor's wedding.
Okay. I think Sarah should submit Tailgate Party.
Yeah, but I think she generates more sympathy in Connor's wedding.
Hmm.
I think Matthew should submit Tailgate Party.
I think Matthew should submit Tailgate Party as well. Kind of like The Sopranos when we had Dre DiMatteo and Michael
Oh, long-term
Imperioli.
parking. Yeah.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
and Kieran could do Killist or Church and State.
So I thought Kieran could do America Decides or Kill List. Maybe Kill List then is our answer because we both said it.
Both said Killist.
I mean, he has the great scene with Mattson on the mountaintop. I think that alone is like his probably most memorable moment of the season, I think.
I mean, it's that and his breakdown in church.
Yeah.
And Jeremy, I think he should do the finale.
I agree. Incredible performance in the finale. How about eldest son Connor Roy for Alan Ruck?
Rehearsal.
Really good.
You're all
Needy love sponges.
Yeah, needy love sponges. So
what about cousin Greg?
Cousin Greg should be America Decides, just for Wasabi Lemon LaCroix.
And he has that great moment.
I was kind of like, no offense to Nick Braun. I was just like, if he gets in again or if he gets snubbed, like sure. But after America Decides, I'm like, I'm all in on another nomination for him just for that alone. And then just him just selling out Shiv with that shrug. Is great. And like he's so much more, even though he's a bumbling idiot too, but he's so much more savvy than Shiv is. And I think it's because he doesn't think he's entitled to this birthright of the CEO position. Like he has to work for it too, right? And he lost his inheritance to Greenpeace. So he's actually asking transactionally for something when he is giving information, like we see in the finale with Kendall. He's like, if I give you something incredible, would you give me something amazing? And it's like, Shiv, girl, why aren't you asking for it in writing that you'd be named CEO from Lucas? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like she could have just brought Greg in when he was asking her the same thing in America Decides. So
how about J. Smith Cameron? And do you think she'll still get in? I guess.
I think she'll get in, and then she should just do Living Plus because that's the lip quivering after Kieran fires her and then she tells him you're not your dad.
I think she'll get in too, but I really I could see her not just because she's not in it so much of the season. And I think it made sense narratively for Jerry not to be there. And for us not really to return to her after like that scene where the second time Roman kind of like comes to her and like is like, hey, like whatever, and she's just like fuck off basically.
At Tailgate?
In Tailgate Party. She doesn't, honestly, I don't even think she's in, like, she has the China syndrome line in the funeral, and then like I don't think she even she's
not in America Decides. She's in the funeral, obviously, but they cut some stuff she has said, Jay has said. So you just kind of see her reaction when Roman breaks down.
And they cut stuff for her in the finale too with Tom, she said.
Yeah. So
I think she'll
I
get
do
in.
like that they, she wasn't in the finale a lot, but I like that because this season really was about the kids. So I like that when we did see her in the finale, it was through how Roman was seeing her.
Yeah.
It's like he killed this relationship, right? So he was like seeing her kind of through like rose-colored glasses, like through the dinner party on the TV, and then through the glass windows of the conference rooms and
Yeah.
stuff. So
Uh,
I think she'll get in. She's not gonna win.
no, I think she'll get in too, but I don't think she's gonna win. But I could see. Do you think like so you know Zoe Winters and no probably Justine Loop?
Would love to see Justine Luke, but sadly, no. What do you think Willa's play is about, though?
Three stupid siblings fighting for a company. It's like Schitt's Creek but dumb.
What is it? Is it called like the Rays or what? Like,
Maybe.
or it could be like Ray, Rey, like
I thought
Spanish.
maybe the Roys with a Z.
We're gonna go like full gangster now. It'll be like a hip hop musical like Hamilton. Kendall could write the bars.
Kendall's not getting up from the bench, Joyce. He's done. We're never going to see Kendall again. He froze to death on that bench. Next up, we have Larry writing. Our good friend Larry, it's a pseudonym on the WGA picket lines, if I remember correctly. A very long email about Succession, offering my 2 cents about the series finale. If we're checking a box, I thought the episode was logically fulfilling. The successor to the Roy dynasty made perfect sense. A yes man who will undoubtedly surround himself with genuflecting sycophants. Throughout the series, the core siblings did nothing but cannibalize each other with whopping insults and kneecapping power moves. Why should the finale have been any different? During every season, viewers watch Kendall be blah, blah, blah. I'm just going to skip forward because we kind of know this. No offense, Larry. I love your writing, but we've been going on for a long time. The finale is pure debauchery, and I felt I needed a shower to cleanse myself from the cesspool of filth and immorality. But what's most ironic, I think the episode was so skin-crawling that it might have inadvertently punted the outstanding drama series Emmy win to the White Lotus. In its 88 minutes, the TV Academy voters were reminded of what awful human beings these people are and why a series like that should not be rewarded one final time. Yes, White Lotus introduced despicable characters who did despicable things, but somehow Mike White managed to package it in a much more digestible way. So my question to you both is, where does Succession rank on the best series list of all time? Kind of swerves there at the end, but...
A real swerve. I don't think it did that at all in terms of its Emmy chances.
No. I don't either. I think the finale was a large success. And like I said earlier, I do think it's like the best series of all time for me.
I don't know where I would rank it. I'm not obsessed with some of these like all-timer anti-hero shows like some people are. Like, I've never rewatched The Sopranos. Did you finish your...
We never did. We never went back to it. We're stuck in like the 5th season, I think.
No. Yeah, I've never rewatched it. I've seen like bits and pieces of episodes here and there, but I've never felt compelled to watch it again. I've never rewatched Mad Men again.
Me neither, yeah.
I have watched Breaking Bad again multiple times. I probably rewatch it every year.
Wow.
So I rewatched it once, twice in 1 month. After El Camino came out, I rewatched it, and then I finished a rewatch and I was like, I'll just watch it again. So I have already rewatched Succession multiple times. Like the last one was after they announced, or Jesse announced, it was the last season in February. So I just did a full rewatch of the first 3 seasons. So I feel like I would need more time. I think that's the thing. Like, I think people are too reactive once something is over to position something in an all-time list. I think we can only take stock of a show's legacy and impact with more distance from it. This is why I also hate this like new trend or recent trend of just a ton of oral histories about a ton of shit. And I'm like, no, you need to wait like 20 years for some of this stuff to do one. It's like, oh, it's like the 1-year anniversary of like this thing. I'm like, no, we don't need an oral history about this. Like I love whatever that thing was, but I don't need a look back on this right now. We need more time from it. Succession is one of my favorite shows, for sure. I think it was a good choice for it to end now, even though I would have loved to seen another season, but I think this was a fitting ending for it. And I think that's the problem with a lot of shows, that they don't know when to say goodbye or when to pull the plug. And yes, like they could have done another season, and Jesse's talked about the ideas, and the actors have talked about, like Kieran has said multiple times, like, oh, I thought we could have done another fifth season, or another season, but that would have just been a different show and a different story. Like their story that they were telling with this show ended in the season 4 finale. So like that, this story is done, and then you can imagine what they're doing. You think Kendall won't get off the bench? Sure. So maybe he does. Maybe he jumps in, or maybe he launches the 100 by himself. Who knows? But that's a different story, because we got the successor to Logan in the finale. So that story is done. So I think in that way it is up there with just knowing when to peace out, which a lot of shows don't know how to do.
From, like you said, I said we're stuck on Sopranos and haven't rewatched Mad Men. And the thing I think I love about Succession is that it is there's not one, it feels like to me, there was not one wasted episode in the 4 seasons, that every episode was driving to a specific point, and that the show is just kind of like a freight train in that regard. And I think a lot of the dramas from like Difficult Men, especially because of the era they were in, where it was a different time and there were more episodes and whatever, they were not created like that. You know what I mean? And like this show is just very disciplined, very laser focused. And that to me separates it from these other shows. And while it's not like a 40-hour movie or whatever, it does feel like as much of like the way a movie is like so laser focused in its storytelling, this show felt to me like that. Like there was not a lot of detours. And like you said, there could have been a million different ways the show could have gone, like a Ted Lasso style, where you're just like following all these great characters, and the discipline to not do that is what separates it for me.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, I can't do this on the fly, of like what other shows went out at the right time. Like I think like, Breaking Bad ended when it should have, but I mean that's also a different show. I can't compare them. I love that show so much, but it was just a different, the engine of that show was completely different from Successions, because that show was about change. It was about turning Mr. Chips into Scarface.
Right.
So and it was more of like a thriller and very plot driven, and Succession is not about the plot, it's about the characters, which is why it was also weird to be obsessed over who was going to win, because it was not about winning, it was about the character dynamics. And that's why you watch, I don't care how much of an asshole a character is, as long as it's well written and it's performed well. Right. And I think, that's also why people create art and why we engage with art. I think it would be super boring if we just watch nice people all the time. Like we should be good people in real life, but I think we watch the people we are not, or watch characters we are not, because we are not those people, and we want to engage with that. And art, as like Ebert says, like it generates empathy, right? Like we try to understand. It doesn't mean that you're trying to redeem these people or they're good in any way, but we understand their actions, and we now understand the Roy kids' actions. So
this is possibly the longest episode we've ever done, but I have 2 more emails from our pals Ivo and David L. So just do Ivo quick, or Evo, sorry. We read his email last week. He definitely did not agree with us about Succession or Brian Cox, if you remember, Joyce.
Oh yeah, Brian's ego. Yes.
And he did mention here, he goes, the last interview he gave about feeling rejected by the show gave me reason, made him feel vindicated, I feel like. So in that interview, Brian Cox said he felt rejected by it. He was written off. But kind of kidding.
Said that already in the interview after Connor's wedding on the official podcast. Like he basically said the same thing. He was like, "I was all right with dying," and he was kind of like joking about it.
Yeah,
it's like you do kind of feel, you think, and I think people just see the pickups and read it. So, but then people just project what they want.
Yeah.
What they believe about someone and their whatever. So
here's the one part. He said, I called the Succession finale. As a whole, do you think their envy among the siblings, that all 3 of them are incapable to share power, all of them wanting to be on top, would be the thing that destroys them? So my question is, why did Shiv hate to see Kendall win more than she hated to see Tom win? Also, I'm calling it now. Sarah Snook is not winning that Emmy. That's Evo, who emailed us at slugfest@goldderby.com.
Okay.
We said why we think Shiv hated Kendall to see Kendall win because she cannot stomach Kendall. I mean, I think that's legitimately one of the most truthful things.
Three of them were, they were all conditioned to just fight with one another over this dangling carrot in front of them since they were kids. Like, that's all they've known. That's what they've grown up with, and it's petty and childish, and that's what it was. Like, she was not doing a favor for Tom in any way. I don't think it was just she got triggered in that moment seeing Kendall in Logan's chair.
Yes.
And like, she never wanted this. Like, she was basically just forced to do this because Lucas was not going to name her CEO. So this is not what she wanted anyway. And like, she was already, in honeymoon states, they were already icing her out, Kendall and Roman. They were like, you can't, like, we have to be co-CEO, not you.
Kendall, for all of what I would say, one of the biggest fails he did, especially knowing, like, one of the reasons he says in the Barbados that they can't have Shiv be the leader is because Shiv 5 seconds ago was on Mattson's side, and it would seem stupid for them to be like, oh, but now she's on our side, right? Like, it did feel like that was a reasonable argument, but the thing he didn't follow through on that argument is then, like, why would she not all of a sudden lockstep behind him, right? Like, it makes no sense based on, like, he understands that she is aligned with Matsson, and the only reason she is not aligned with Matsson at the moment is because he fucked her over. But then why would Kendall think that Shiv would actually just align with him? Like, he was so blinded by getting the crown that he didn't realize what a big blind spot that was for him, basically.
Yeah, and like, the only reason she was aligning with Matsson is because she knew she was never gonna like get it from the two of them, because it was the Roy boys versus Shiv the Shiv, right? She knew that, so that's why she had to look out for herself, and that's why she didn't want Megan to win the election. But yeah, they're all just arrogant narcissists and with tunnel vision. So like, they're only looking out for themselves, and yeah, like, she just didn't want to see her brother win. That's it.
Yep.
Like,
Joyce, last one. Again, we've gone on very long. If you're still watching this, God bless. It's from David L. It's your regular listener, David L. I thought the series finales of Succession and Mrs. Maisel were both well executed, but my feelings are a bit mixed on the series finale of Barry. It felt like Bill Hader underused his screen time when he wrote the finale because he's not in it all that much and doesn't get an emotional scene like the rest of the cast did. He doesn't show himself trying to call Sally on the phone when she and John choose to leave without him, or him mentally breaking down as in previous episodes. Also, it would have been nice if Barry and Jean could have had one more funny argument to clear the air between them before he shot him, since they have had a lot of mixed, angry emotions at each other for the things they've done. Is it weird that we didn't see what happened with the Raven years later in the flash forward? Hope this means HBO and Bill Hader will give Stephen Root a spinoff. Since Joyce is the #1 Barry fan, what are your thoughts on this? Now, we kind of just talked about this, but anything there, Joyce, that you wanted to add?
No, not really. I mean, again, like, I wasn't really surprised that Bill had decreased screen time this season. I think it was both a logistic thing, but I think he's just also not interested in writing more for Barry. Like, he's, there's a section of fans who love Barry, and I think he has always viewed Barry as an idiot, which he is. And I think that's also why he was just kind of like moving away from a lot of screen time with him. And, the way he just kind of set up the remaining episodes after the time jump, he basically, like, he had the most screen time in 5, basically, because I was like set at their new home. But then he tried to make it converge all again with everyone back in LA and all these like disparate storylines. So and I mean, I saw a lot of complaints about that the finale did not have final moments between certain characters, and honestly, I didn't need any more than what they gave. Like, I didn't need, like, I mean, Fuchs and Barry had a scene together, no words for exchange. I'm like, I don't think you need to exchange words. Like, he saved his son.
We've
for
had
him.
enough of that, right? Like I think
Yeah.
again, like trusting the audience that
Yeah, you trust the audience,
yeah.
and sometimes you say a lot more without dialogue than you do.
And
Uh,
again, the discipline of the storytelling, I think, is like, yeah, of course you want to have like moments with like with Succession, like Jerry and Roman could have had a finale moment, but
right.
not
And
having it
I
is
like
way
that they did it.
better. Right. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like I do think that is like there's a discipline there though, because like if you're the creator, like Bill Hader knows probably that like it would be great if like there's one more scene, right? Between like, but not doing that then is like the discipline of telling the story. That's what I
Yeah,
think
you
makes the show
trust the
good.
audience and you
Yeah.
understand why Fuchs did that. And I think that's also something that we as viewers do when we're watching series finales of shows, and something that past shows have given us. It's like, oh, we're going to have a final moment. You're going to serve each character and give each character a moment in the finale. And Succession, yeah, didn't do that. We didn't have a final Roman and Jerry scene. And yeah, in Barry, I was fine with Gene just shooting him with Rip Torn's gun. I think the key moment of that scene was Barry talking to Tom, Gene's agent, and Tom convinces him to turn himself in because it it would be like his last great move uh for Gene, like he would be Gene's savior. And like Barry was gonna do it, and I love that it was just in contrast with the night before of him telling Sally like he's not gonna turn himself in, like he won't do it to save his family, like, even though like he saved his family physically, but he's not gonna turn himself in, but he's gonna turn himself in because now he can be a hero and save Gene, so to speak, and that's the moment that Gene shoots him. So it's again, it's like the Barry wanting to be a hero and seen as a hero and being opportunistic about it. Like he's a narcissist too, and it's he's trying to serve his own interests, like Jerry. How does this serve my interests? So I like that it was just Gene coming out of nowhere and shooting him, and then he just says, "Oh wow."
Great button.
Yeah.
Joyce, we have to wrap up. We've gone, I think this is almost 2 hours. It's got to be longer than the Ted
Probably
Lasso.
it's a longer it's longer than Ted Lasso.
It
Yeah.
is. So joke's on
Yeah.
us. I guess the real joke is on us here that we went longer than Ted Lasso. But this was so much fun. And we'll be back next week without any of finales to talk about, I guess, and anything else really to talk about.
No, it'll be the week before ballots. So
All right.
yeah.
We'll look forward to that. All right. Bye, Joyce.